I think our culture is a really poor way of dealing with loss and death. Something that's really interested me is thinking about how a lot of the old cemeteries in this city are placed where the edges of town used to be, and it just so happens that the growth has happened beyond that. But whenever, like, cemeteries aren't integrated into communities, you know, cemeteries are put like elsewhere on the outside, and I think it has something to do with once you experience a loss, it becomes really difficult to kind of reincorporate yourself back into regular life, because so many people just don't want to talk about it for obvious, like, pretty good reasons.
We're kind of providing a unique opportunity for them to decide what it is that they want their legacy to be, and what it is that, how they want to describe it, and how they want to talk about it, and how they want to tell their story. So maybe looking at it as a capturing of their history, and their history as a part of our wider history, and how important those individual lives and individual stories are, as well as having that for their families later on. Imagine like having a video of your great-great-great-grandparent talking about their life in a film like this. I think that would be incredible, to be able to see something like that and know your own heritage and know your history and the people that came before you. So I think that we're providing that service to the patient themselves, but we're also providing the service to people who don't even exist on this earth yet.
Yeah. Like, I go to more funerals than weddings, and it's just like I have that regret of like family members dying. I didn't spend that much time with them, so I feel like this is a good moment for me, or good space where I could I could be present for people at their last few days, you know?
I don't know, I think giving people a chance to define how they're remembered is really impactful to me. I don't know, like, I've lost a lot of family members in my life, and especially I never met my grandmother. My grandfather died whenever I was really young, and hearing my whole family is really close, and so like hearing all the stories of like older cousins and like aunts and uncles, like about like, oh, how much I would have liked my grandmother, how much like, oh my gosh, my grandfather, like they still see my grandfather and me, and like things like that. Like, I will never know. Giving people the opportunity to talk to people that, you know, they wouldn't be able to say anything to, or talk about how they want to be remembered, or talk about like favorite aspects of their life other than just stories, but actually getting to hear them say it, I think is the most valuable thing in the world, because there's some people that I would give anything to hear them say that to me.
My connection to sort of legacy storytelling kind of goes back to just, I mean, like, I think both of my grandparents, both of my grandmothers specifically, when they like got close to end of life, and when they were sort of, kind of when they were done, kind of tending to the sort of the kind of daily domestic rigor of being a mother and a grandmother, they started telling the truth. I really appreciated the experience of watching someone kind of be beyond a point of feeling like they had to maintain a certain fiction about their lives, and they had a certain kind of kind of candor.
I'm in an interesting point in my life right now, because my grandma, she's 89, and the stuff that we talk about has changed throughout the years, because I didn't understand it, but I asked her about her life, her past on what was her favorite car and stuff like that. And then I would joke around hey, Grandma, you're going to get a speeding ticket if you keep driving like that. Stuff like that. So you just got to feel it out, get to know them a bit more, because the conversation is different depending on your age.
What are my views on death? Death doesn't necessarily scare me, just because I know the peace that comes after it. While it's more tragic for people that are left on earth than it's the people that get to leave and go to heaven. And while it sucks having people leave, especially if it's too early, it sucks more for the people that are still on earth that have to miss them, because there's no sadness or pain or anything like that in heaven. So,
like if you're going to ascribe tragedy to death, then you have to kind of like taint that person's legacy with like this, oh, but it was all pointless and sad in the end. Because if you do that, then it's like you're retroactively kind of passing a referendum on the quality of that person's life. My brother told me that one time. He was like, just because Monica died early and just because she died in this terrible way doesn't mean that her life had any less or more value. You know, it had a baseline level of value, and we were lucky to have been a part of it. You know, she could have died 20 years earlier. She could have not been born at all. You know, it's impossible to go down those hypothetical scenarios. But it seems to me like this idea that death is purely tragedy is like a dead end, and it's also a dead end full of spiders, because there's nothing good that goes down that road.
It's going to be a learning experience either way, but I think it is an opportunity for me to be uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. You grow by being uncomfortable. That's the place to grow. So yeah, I'm gonna be on board for this project. You know?
Sort of liked that idea of letting and sort of, you know, kind of encouraging people to tell the truth about their lives, especially those who maybe had been encouraged not to do that. You know, so I think that's my current commitment. Is along those lines. Is I really want to honor the ability, or sort of honor the storyteller's agency.
When you give so much control to an individual about the way that they tell their story, there becomes the possible issue of if some of the truth will be erased because there are things that they don't want to talk about, or there's a light in which they don't want to be seen. And yeah, it's just really hard to find the balance between those two things and making sure you're doing your best for the patient, but you're also not erasing any history. And we don't want to erase any of those negative impacts and invalidate anyone else's experience.
There was this black man in like a diner, and this lady was serving him. She's like, we don't serve people of your kind here. And he could have responded any way he wanted to, but he was just like, oh, well, good. I don't want people anyway. I'll have chicken. So it's just like stuff like that, where it's just like you see the racism, but you have a space to respond. Like, don't ever react to something, because that just feeds fire. But if you respond, you can use that way to pivot and show that you are a person too, just like them. So
I'm really excited to prove to people that they've lived a beautiful life, and because there is beauty in simplicity, and that's like my catchphrase. And yeah, because
that's on camera. I like
that. That is on camera.
Being given the opportunity or being put in a situation in which you get to reflect and kind of curate what other people remember about you can be really helpful, insofar as it'll help you create some sort of vocabulary about the value of your life. You know, it's about you can because that's a hard topic to deal with. I mean, you know, I remember talking to my sister about doing a legacy film for her before she passed away, and she said that she ultimately chose not to do it because she said, I don't know what I would say. Mm-hmm. I mean, because what would you say? That's such a hard question. It's like, sum up your life in 10 minutes. Let's go. Snap, snap. Mm-hmm. So I think this could be an opportunity possibly for some patients, or some people who are approaching the end of their lives, to develop a way of contextualizing their experiences, of understanding them, or even of narrativizing their life, you know? Like, what was it all about? That's a helpful question to answer, because if you don't answer it, you're not going to find peace, if that's what you're after.
How serious is this gonna get?
Does my hair look okay?
And,
It's not like, I mean, like, well, that's what's with all the bad questions? The hardest questions that you can ask a human.
Satan is chewing on Judas's head.
This is the last time you see me on camera.
You said that like 14 times.